Here's a question from Clover Sky 77. Your UFO sightings video got me thinking. You seem to have had quite a few paranormal experiences when some people never have had any. Never had any. Can you see in someone's chart if someone is more prone to experience the paranormal, such as ghosts, UFOs, or aliens? And then there's another question from Junks My Fashion. Does a person's birth chart show aspects towards a person having had alien contact or alien abductions? I'm curious. Thanks for the great videos. Right, well, I'm going to answer those two at the same time. Yes. Okay, so in the birth chart there are pure vibrational energy streams coming into our Earth's sphere and affecting absolutely everything, not just the human beings here as well. So everything is subject to these forces. But particularly in human history, certain of these forces have been left sort of dormant or not developed to their potential, and that would be because of taboos in our society. And those taboos can come from just, the culture that we live in, religion, and various other limitations put on us by maybe it's the climate, maybe it's human systems like governments, and simply what is considered to be acceptable and what isn't. Like, for instance, it's not so very long ago, particularly in Britain, that women didn't even have the vote. So for a long time women were a sort of subclass, and a lot of women who had amazing potential on paper, at least in the birth chart, would not have been able to cultivate and get educated and or even be looked upon as being able to take certain responsibilities or to be successful in a worldly sense, barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen kind of thing. In the Second World War, apparently, there was a special dispensation from the government because so many men were called up to go off and bravely fight for the freedom of their country, that the women took over all the jobs the men did, working in munitions factories and running farms and building and generally just doing everything that the men had done traditionally, at the same time as cooking the meals, feeding the babies and looking after the household, which they did admirably well. And apparently at the end of the war, when the men all came home, that special privilege was withdrawn and the women had to go back to the way they were before. But they'd had a sneak peek, in a way, of what it was like to have that more liberated, even though it was under a great deal of pressure, and it was a very dramatic passage to go through in history. And a lot of the women who had been in these more responsible positions didn't like it one little bit, because they'd been able to start developing, as I would see it as the astrologer, different parts and potentials in their birth chart. But also we could look at other things like slavery. There are certain similarities there between the position of women in society with slavery historically, and also having no rights. Also in societies which are very strongly religious as well, and the religious ideal very much repressing normal human drives in various ways, and there's been all sorts of ways. So my point is that in the chart certain vibrational energies coming through or from the planets, or in their angular in their angularity from certain parts of the zodiac to our Earth, and nobody really knows how it works actually. They couldn't be developed, even though they don't have an opinion themselves, but it would have been our receiving of those energies and our deciding that certain things were just frowned upon. Now we're coming into a time when particularly the transpersonal planets, and in those more ancient times, they weren't even known about. And here I'm talking about Uranus, Pluto and Neptune. Now we're coming into a time where the more unusual side and the more unusual potential, unconventional even, can start coming out. That's because we're increasingly coming into a time of Uranian energy. Now the planet Uranus, again historically going back into the mists of time, does rule anything unconventional, unorthodox. It rules anything to do with aviation. So that's space travel, but of course that's normal, travel on airplanes and helicopters and I don't know, zeppelins and whatever else, that we managed to get up into the air, kites, anything like that. Over the years it rules anything to do with aviation, but also astronomy and astrology and off-planet activity or off-planet beings. It rules anything to do with the higher mind. It's a very high frequency. It does actually rule electricity, but it also rules all power sources. And as we're coming more into the Aquarian age, we're seeing more invention with the way we power things like electric cars and wind turbines and solar panels and geothermal heating and all sorts of other stuff. It also, Uranus rules technology. So because the planet Uranus, and sciences of all kinds, so because the planet Uranus is really being more and more amplified because it is the ruling planet of Aquarius, the age of Aquarius, then this particular element or characteristic can now, which is rather kind of off-piste, it's very unorthodox energy, and it's the energy of leaping into, intuitively really leaping into new things. Is raising the vibration, and also it does mean that once the vibration is being raised, which is slowly going up all the time, more and more people are having connection with maybe seeing UFOs, unidentified flying objects, which Uranus rules. Also it rules identified flying objects as well, and also off-planet beings. So in the birth chart, I would look at any connection, particularly between Mercury and Uranus, for somebody who's more prone, and really that's a very important word that you used, Clover Skies 77, prone, because actually the planets in the natal chart and their positions and aspects incline. They do not dictate, but they incline towards certain types of conditions and experiences. So with Uranus touching into the planet which rules the mind, Uranus rules also the higher centers in the mind. Put those two together and that person is more likely to see a light zipping across the sky as a UFO comes in, maybe momentarily, and then blips out of our dimension, or even to have more up close and personal experiences than that. You also mentioned ghosts, and I would make a distinction between ghosts and spirits. Actually, spirits are from the dimension beyond ours, or dimensions beyond ours in some cases, but usually it's the dimension just next to ours, and they seem to have a consciousness, they have an intention, they are trying to link in order to get a message across. And ghosts are like a haunting. It's not. It's more random. It's like an echo of an imprint that was there. So I would be interested in connecting with the knowledge of a spirit, if that spirit was coming from love and good intention, and I wouldn't really be having any truck with ghosts other than to maybe help them move on, and a bit like soul retrieval really is to help them get back to their fuller spirit, as it were. Those people who are most likely to connect with spirits, I find, have a strong Neptune, particularly Neptune on the moon. Not so much the sun, because there's a very different dynamic with the sun, but moon Neptune people, in no matter which sign it is, seem to be prone to having these kinds of paranormal experiences. Now, you throw into the mix Mercury and Uranus at the same time, in no matter what aspect they make, then you really do have the ingredients for throughout the life having bizarre, unusual, strange things happening. And of course you've got to look at the chart as a whole, because you have to see, you know, how well the person can deal with this type of experience, which is maybe still now, even in this more enlightened world we live in, as far as the mainstream is concerned, it means, you know, that you should be taken immediately to an asylum, or put on some kind of sedation or drug, or other kind of drug, or, you know, whatever. But indeed, these higher centers can now be developed, because this energy of Uranus is now being amplified in the present culture, or it's just beginning to come in a lot more. And of course, we are getting the youngsters coming in now to this culture, who have never known anything different. Uranus also rules, as I said, technology, but anything digital, anything binary, anything to do with mathematics, anything to do with, really along with Saturn actually, geometry, and you know, just the digital age, the IT sort of age. It's very Mercury, because it's about communications, but it's Mercury Uranus. And so on the material level, Mercury Uranus together can manifest as everything we see around us, with smartphones and pads and pods and whatever else there are, you know, laptops and computers and various different kinds of sort of holographic films and all of that sort of stuff. But if you take it on another level, that Uranus rules the higher centers and the higher mind, then it can be that one is able to vibrationally make a match with an off-planet being, because any that I've had sort of brushes with, and I've made another video about the meeting with the little ET that I had way back in the 70s. One has to be very kind of clear, clean and open in order to have that contact make sense. So you have to look at the whole of the chart to see whether somebody can actually handle that, you know, whether they've got whether they've got a real strong center, they feel secure, they've got a strong mind, and self-awareness, and they're not it's not kind of tipping them off into something which is scary and gets their nerves on edge and spins them off into some kind of undesirable mental state. So anyway, in answer to your question, here's me rabbiting on again. Yeah, those are the two I would look for. There are other mixes as well. I've mentioned Mercury, Uranus, and Moon, Neptune, and also Moon in Pisces as well. But those are the two main ones anyway. So I hope that answers your question and questions, and thank you for sending them in.